On a day last year, the last round of the year, and on a day very reminiscent to today, pouring rain, the Pies defeated Melbourne. Let's look at the last time we met. So cast your minds back to round 24, 2024, and it was the last game of the year for both Collingwood and for Melbourne. Both disappointing years, and for Collingwood, it was a good way to end the year, winning a bunch of our last games, only dropping that Sydney game and smashing Melbourne on a day, like I said, wild weather. If you remember, there was that 35 or so minute delay in the last quarter, about 10 minutes to go in the last quarter, and the game stopped because there was lightning around the MCG, and that last quarter went for about 65 minutes, which is just absolutely insane. I remember being in the tunnel for that, so that's what I'll remember that game for. What do you remember the game for? Leave your comments in the section down below. But let's look back at this game. Like I said, Collingwood won this game by 46 points, and it was an interesting end to our season. Now, obviously, ultimately disappointing, defending premiers, not making finals, and we gave ourselves the best opportunity to make finals a little bit too late. We left our run a little bit too late at the end of the year, but it was nice to sort of go into this game with shades of what we were going to do or what we can do in 2025. Saw a little bit of that sort of gameplay that we're bringing in this year. And this was the game where both of the Daicos brothers had 40 disposals each, so 80 disposals between two Daicos brothers, and it was who gets the 3 votes. Is it Nick? Is it Josh? Ultimately, it was Nick getting those 3 votes. Ultimately, as well, didn't really matter because he didn't win the Brownlow anyway. But this game, it just had a little bit of everything. Melbourne came out, kicked the first, and then you remember that Darcy Moore got concussed by a Kozzy Pickett's hip and shoulder, and things started to kick off. Collingwood went on a 6-goal streak, which included 2 Bobby Hill goals. Nick Daicos had an incredible first quarter. Like, he pretty much had the Brownlow votes sewed up in that first quarter just from what he was able to do.
As Nick Daicos just low balls it, Collingwood get there first.
He had 12 touches and a goal, and Gary Lyon at the end of the first quarter even said that Nick Daicos absolutely dominated. So you could see that the tone was set pretty early, especially with that run of 6 goals in just horrible conditions. In this game as well, Will Parker and Ed Allen announced themselves to the Magpie Army pretty much and said, hey, we've got the cojones to play some real good AFL football. They both kicked a goal that game, which you absolutely love to see. And that's when I sort of sat back and said, okay, I was harsh on Will Parker throughout the year, but this is the game where he sort of stood up as that AFL player, and so did Ed Allen, and it said a lot about going into 2025.
We'll come back to you in a moment. Here's Crisp trying to bang his way through. There's another one for the Pies. Out to 47 points, and Allen gets his first goal in football, and don't they know it?
We won this game off the back of a lot of intercept possessions, which is what our game style has been for the last couple of years, but more so in 2025. So what we saw in that last game of 2024 is what we brought into 2025. And look at this, right? We outscored the Demons 69-24 from intercepts. And that says a lot. Says a lot about what our pressure can do. And those pressure pies really came back. Again, albeit a little bit too late. But it was just really good to see.
Bishop Brett Rosebery and the retiring Fraser Ray Chamberlain, 389. 1,650 games between these 4 umpires. Here is Pendlebury, the little low shooter to Bobby. Punt road end, no problems. 21-point lead.
Darcy Cameron really held his own against Max Gawn. He kicked 2 first-half goals. And Max Gawn, he had 20 disposals, 5 clearances, was really trying to do it all himself. With Melbourne, it was a disappointing end to their season, but you got to remember that they had a handful of their best players out of that game. So, how much do you sort of take out of that result? A 46-point win is just incredible in general, but it was a disappointing end to Melbourne's season. And, a bit of a bright spark to our disappointing season as well. But one that, what I love to see in that game last year was, there was 10 minutes to go. There was that rain, that big rain delay, lightning delay, thunderstorm delay. And when we got out there, we just kept hitting it hard. It wasn't like we just sat back on our laurels. And there could have been an opportunity where Melbourne didn't come back and win, but Melbourne sort of attacked us a little bit harder. But we weathered that storm, no pun intended, and we go on to win the game. And I thought it was a really good game. I really enjoyed myself in that game. Again, a dead rubber game, right? These two teams should have been fighting for positions in the top 4 or in the top 8 at least, but both just had disappointing seasons. And ironically, the season that we wanted to end as quickly as we could for both teams was delayed a little bit longer, so we had to wait longer for the end of a disappointing season.
Here we go. This could be game off here.
Head to the rooms.
So the game has been stopped for lightning. Players have been told by the umpires to head to the rooms, and I think it might even be a mandatory 20 minutes.
So what did we learn from that game? So what I learned anyway was that vintage Collingwood, vintage being 2022, 2023 Collingwood, was still out on display, and we weren't far off it. And Craig McRae did say that during his presser. He said, look, we weren't far off it. There's still a lot of work to go, but he was very happy with what he saw. It was just that little bit, that Sydney game and just a couple of games, those 4 games that we dropped right after the bye. But we did see a lot of positives from that Collingwood game. The Daicos brothers. Lipinski probably had one of his best games for the club, racking up over 30 disposals. Darcy Cameron keeps announcing himself on the biggest stage against some of the best ruckmen. Bobby Hill was electric as always. You got to remember, we didn't have Jamie Elliott. There was no Brody Myercheck as well. So we were battling a little bit, and I did love to see those the young kids really come into their own in such a big game and a big way to end our season. And I think it would be reminiscent, like, yes, the last time we met is just about round 24, but if you look at our last, 6 or 7 games against Melbourne, we've really had the wood over them. Like, look at this, right? So 2021, King's birthday, we beat them, yeah? 2022, we beat them again. 2023, our premiership year, was Brodie Grundy's return. You got to remember that. Kicked a goal to a couple of boos and stuff. Melbourne go on to win that game by 4 points. We get our revenge in that qualifying final. 2024, we put them to bed twice. So we've got a really, really, really good recent record against Melbourne, and I just can't see that turning.
Shot moments ago. That's better. 2 on the night.
So what's changed between that team that took on Melbourne last year to this team that's taking on Melbourne this year? Well, for one, Charlie Dean, Finn McRae, Joe Richards are all out of the team. We actually dropped Ned Long for this game, right? There was no McStay. There was no Billy Frampton. And now, look at the team now. Frampton is a mainstay in the backline. Ned Long is this A grade. I'm going to call him an A grader. I don't care, right? I'm going to call him an A grader. We didn't see that last year. We're seeing that now. And this is the perfect weather for Ned Long to absolutely come out and dominate. Dan McStay returns to the team. We are literally a stronger team now than we were in round 24. We're adding Perryman. We're adding Dan Houston as well. We're adding Tim Membry. So we have gotten better. And by looking at it, if we can beat Melbourne by 46 points with the team that we had, not that we were a bad team last year, but adding the personnel now, in that rain, we can play dry weather football, and I think that's another thing that proved as well, where we can really play to the conditions. So it's a perfect look back at what we were able to do in the wet torrential rain last year to what we should be able to do today in the wet torrential rain this year. Like I said, leave your memories down below of that game. What did you do in those 35 minutes? I remember I was in the tunnel because it was absolutely pouring down. I was in the tunnel with Dad, just absolutely hanging out, just waiting. Waiting for the game to return so the season can be over. But I just wanted to see that last 10 minutes of Collingwood football. And it was just, what I loved about that game last year was the crowd was still packed of Collingwood supporters. Big cheer right at the end. That we sung the song with gusto, because as Collingwood supporters, we not only do we love this team, right? We bleed for this team. So it was nice, even though it was a disappointing season, a disappointing end to the season, and it was Ray Chamberlain's last ever AFL adjudicated umpiring game. So, congrats to him. It was just one of those games where, yes, we won by 46 points, but it was like, it was a bit of a double-edged sword because ultimately it didn't mean anything, but it held us in good stead to know what we can do and what we can achieve in 2025. But until then, like, comment, subscribe, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your pets, and until next time, double shackers, I'll swoop you later.